All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending today here and online. We are going to go ahead and kick off this meeting of the North Columbus JC's Professional Development Night. We are really excited tonight to have Mayor Ike Stage here with us, Mayor of Grove City. He is going to be talking about some of the voids in leadership, some of the holes in the systems and the things that we see in our daily lives. And this is going to be conducted as more of a round table, round robin discussion. So everybody will be seated around a table, and hopefully I have angled the camera in such a way that everybody is able to get a good view of what's going on. Mayor Stage, I will go ahead and let you take the floor. I'm just going to fiddle around with the settings here a little bit.
Okay.
And
fine-tuned. I don't want to. But before I get started, I always like to know who I'm talking to. And I know people normally just don't like to introduce themselves. Like that's part of, the understanding who I'm dealing with. So I'd like to know who you are, where you're from, and where you work even. Start with you, gentlemen.
I'm Eric. I work down at Nationwide Arena, and I live up in the town.
Nationwide Arena. Really? Okay. I'm on the board that manages Nationwide Arena. It's called the Convention Board. Good. Yes.
My name is Matt Berger. I do customer service for performance, and fun fact, supernatural hair color.
And I see you have a Franklin University shirt on.
Yes, I'm going to school there as well.
And you're called an adult student. I was one for 12 years.
No, they call me an adult student. I don't feel like an adult.
Well, that means they're doing their job. Yeah, good.
My name is Eric. I'm from Reynoldsburg area, and I'm a staff accountant for plumbing and drain professionals.
All right. Okay.
Steve Kowalski, I'm past chapter president, and I gave up working.
Oh, did you? Yeah, it's I've retired 4 times.
Why go back again?
One and done.
Yes.
Kevin Kowalski, live in Columbus, and I work for Davey Tree.
What do you trade? Good company. The headquarters in Kent. That's still up there. Okay.
President, as am I. My name is Annie. I am originally from Canton, actually. I'm a Columbus transplant. I'm originally from Stark County. Been living down here for about 4 years, and I've gone to multiple. I've lived with these fine folks in Westerville. I've gone to different cities in Columbus area, but currently I live in Clintonville, Worthington area. I am the office administrator for Polaris Fashion Place Mall. And I've held various roles within the JC organization, including state president. So.
I'm sure still involved with them all. I heard that name before. Glimsher.
Glimsher, which name?
Glimsher.
Yes, it's Washington Prime Group now,
right.
And Glimsher used to own our property.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Very. My daughter is a Lutheran minister, and the Glimsher home was made of, not the home, the grounds were made available by them to the Trinity Seminary.
Oh, no.
So she became a house lady, I guess. She took care of washing their Mercedes
Okay.
and cleaning the pools and doing those kind of things. But I knew her Glimsher many years ago.
Oh,
Great,
nice.
great family.
Yeah, I come from a I've worked in retail mall management for over 20 years.
Oh.
And prior to my departure, or prior to my arrival down here, I worked for Starwood Retail Partners, which Michael Glimsher is a part of the executive team there. And then currently Steve Glimsher owns our Auntie Anne's franchise at our mall currently.
Okay. So
They're all over.
with your adventure down in different areas, how did you feel when you drove into Grove City?
Oh, it's a very pleasant town. I like how Grove City presents itself as a city. I like it's very, to me, it seemed very well taken care of with the parks and just the areas of opportunity, I believe, just from an outsider perspective.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know.
Yeah. And we've really connected really well with the Grove City young professionals in this area too,
Okay.
and the opportunities that we are able to have together to collaborate. So far,
Great.
that's my
Great.
initial
That's good.
assessment.
Right answer.
Thank you.
Greg 33rd, I'm a data center supervisor in the state of Ohio. My primary address is in Ripley, but we live in Darvydale.
Spell your last name.
THIRTYACRE, just like a piece of land.
Okay. Very good.
Ashley 30 acre, also another, which he'll
Oh,
get to
yeah.
over there, but yeah, so you got where we live, and then I am an instructional designer, so I do training and development at Wexner Medical Center, so.
That's impressive.
Yep, enjoy it.
You young man.
Brandon Hill, born and raised in Orient, Ohio, just down the road here. Spent the last 10 years down in Texas and then moved back to the area about a year ago. Worked for the NCJC Housing and Development Foundation.
And you are a former mayor.
Yeah, former shadow mayor, I think. That's one of the first times Ike and I ever spent any time together was he allowed me to shadow him on government day. So,
But you didn't do what some other people that I've had the opportunity to shadow, they shadowed me. One was a close friend of ours, and she went home and told her mother, she said, what, the mother first asked her, what'd you do? They said, well, I followed the mayor. What'd he do? Nothing. So who do we have online?
I'm Nicholas Herringa. I am a commercial sales manager for Lowe's. I'm a past North Columbus JC chapter president, past Ohio State JC president, current chairman of the board of directors for JCI Ohio. I'm also on the national team as a membership coach.
Great, great. Anybody else online? Don't see anything.
that's it. I think that's it online. We do have a late.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I was out there loading the car. Greg 30 acre, born and raised in West Jeff. Past president of North Columbus JC's. Past vice president of all the positions, and founder of the NCJC Housing Development Foundation. My boss.
Good. So, well, you've been to Grove City
A
before.
lot. Well,
Right, right.
Yeah,
I live in the First Point Orient area.
Sure.
and the foundation building.
Yeah, right, okay. So how do you feel driving in the Grove City?
I don't drive.
What do you like coming into town?
Traffic,
Yeah,
Rush hour.
pretty normal.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask that is, we work really hard on making sure the community is welcome. That's the reason the flowers are out there, and we try to keep the entrances well landscaped and make people, we call it a sense of arrival. That's nothing new, but we do take a lot of pride in that, and we work hard at it. You just can't be there and not maintain it. People ask it all the time, when are you going to get downtown done? The answer is never, because there's always something we can do and do better. Matter of fact, today, talking about traffic, had traffic backed up because we had people painting the cross members on the traffic light signs. And because they'd become tarnished and weren't as sharp as what they should be. And so it's ongoing all the time. Well, tonight, what I want to do was, as we're having a good conversation about what I'm going to call a conversational leadership. And if people say, well, you're pretty sophisticated there, Mayor, that big old board, but it does give me a chance to be interactive with you and be able to make notes as we go. And I guess the conversation is, and so it's a question, is there a leadership void? Now, personally, I would tell you, having been in management, mayor for on and off for 30 some years, there is a incredible void. You can't get people to run for the school board, you can't get people to run for city council. And those who run for state legislature, sometimes you wonder. So, I mean, to me, there's a tremendous void. But what's feeling around the table?
It's hard to get people to volunteer.
Period. Right.
It's
Right.
hard to get people on council. I used to be a city council. Know that. The people that want on are usually people that have a pet peeve and think they're going to go up there and fix their problem, and they're not concerned about the overall unity.
Yeah.
And that's small town politics.
Well, but I think it's got the bubbling up effect, because I think a lot of times, even the legislature, it's a single purpose, single theme, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but you do have to have people that have a much broader sense. And I'll tell you from the political side, what I have learned, and this is a scary thing, is people see it as a job. And to me, the time it switches from being a politician to serve the public to it's a job, that's a big change. So, do I have anybody disagree that we have avoided?
No.
Okay. Because if you do, I mean, I would like to know. Give me some idea. You know, this, and I'm standing on the wrong side of the woman knows you right here. Did you notice that, Brent? You did, see it? So the basic question is what is leadership? And then what it is not. And so I want to get some ideas on what leadership is and kind of check off some of the things I made note of.
Trying to get somebody to take pride in their job, to do their job, motivate them to do what they're supposed to do.
Ownership.
Yeah. But getting somebody else, I mean, not yourself doing that, but getting somebody else to do that.
Yeah.
Are you asking what a leader or leadership is? A leader is somebody that believes in what they're doing and can generate enough enthusiasm with others to get them to join in on that same belief. And as a team, take on the project rather than as an individual trying to change the world. You've got a group of ideas to challenge each other as to how to make it better. But a leader is the one with vision and the ability to get people to believe in it enough and have enough enthusiasm about it to get other people to believe in it with them.
Yeah, I call it building consensus, which is sometimes difficult, particularly in a political world when you have straight partisan objectives. But I think, you know, it is just as you described. Now, I'm a little bit, I see them both the same, but a leader being under the umbrella of leadership. What else do you think of?
I think a leader is a catalyst for change.
Catalyst for change. Very good. Very good.
What's the question again?
It's what is leadership, or what is a good leader?
I would say putting others before yourself is what I would say, or like the benefit of the community instead of just your own.
I call it willing to sacrifice.
None of that you get 4th of July. I told everybody, you can go claim all the fame and glory, but if something goes wrong, all of you disappear. It comes back to me and it lands on my shoulders. But as far as going in front of the newspaper and getting compliments, you guys go take the handouts and I'll deal with the problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simon Sinek says you can take credit when you take accountability.
That's it.
That's good. Very good. You have an opinion?
I believe a person in leadership is someone who's able to provide direction and motivation for others and to also help them develop themselves. Those other people develop and grow to become leaders themselves.
still willing to jump into the journey.
Yeah, very good, very good. Anybody else? Well, what's some of the,
Nick, you have any thoughts on leadership?
He's on mute.
that's the advantage of being remote.
I think inspiration as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What I think about it is that a leader is a person who uses their influence to get a group of people to do the tasks that they know needs to be done.
Yeah.
So we had a slideshow this weekend at our leadership retreat. And we had a number of Simon Sinek quotes rotating through it. So I have a lot of those on the top of my brain. But another one was, a manager wishes to elevate themselves, a leader wishes to elevate others.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, some of the ones I had, able to build consensus is a big one because I think if you have that trait, it really, is one that's, and it's a trait that's, what is not, being arrogant, bullying, and all those kind of things. It's not that. Because there are ways to get consensus if you want to bully somebody, I guess. Have a vision and a purpose. Have a presence. Now, as a for instance, I got to meet Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a leader just because he came in, stood there, and had the presence about him. You know that this is the guy. And there are people like that, has that presence, and they don't have to say a whole. We kind of agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Being respected and respectful, genuine, and the position held. Now, this is one I'd like to get a little bit more discussion on. Just because somebody may be the president of the company isn't necessarily a statement of leadership or leader. And I feel the same way. I don't think, now I've not worked for anybody who had a high level, well, I have. Not very many people won't name names that because of their title or their position that I didn't respect as a leader, but it doesn't mean it automatic.
Definitely not automatic.
Not automatic. Intimidation, the other word I use for what it's not. Micromanager. Although I think there are people who can micromanage and still be a leader, given the situation. The one that given to me as a quote a long time ago is, a true leader is one who has to do nothing. But the people around him does so much that you are doing something, but it isn't like,
Well, he's conveyed, I think if he's a leader and he's got that opportunity to have a staff that does that.
yeah,
He's conveyed in a very effective way what the target is.
right,
And he surrounded himself with people that understand that target, and you don't have to push it, you just ride along.
right.
And when it needs a little nudge in a different direction, you can give the nudge.
Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher, said that a good leader is one that when the task is accomplished, you do not realize that they were there to have accomplished it. But all the other team members are elevated, are noticed, are congratulated, but the leader should almost disappear into that team.
Good point.
And shouldn't be the one up on the pedestal, but should be just part of the momentum that caused that thing to happen.
Now, I'm interjecting another word, management. But I think as Peter Drucker said, management by walking around. And I love that because you learn so much by walking around and interacting and so forth.
I think they set the example. But a lot of hours encourages others to get involved in it. You're the first guy there and the last guy to leave.
Yeah. I bet that's right.
Not the late one and making excuses because everybody has excuses.
Right.
You're expected to lead them by setting the example.
Yeah. So the question I want to ask now, the examples of leaders, give me some people that come to mind. They don't have to be people that I'd recognize, but people that, as a leader. Anybody got a person? I picked
General George Patton.
Who's that, George Patton? Yep. Although I think the intimidation kicks in a little bit with
I'm not a Steve Jobs fan, but I think Steve Jobs did a job of setting a goal and getting a lot of people to fall in place with it. His marketability was, it's all about me, not Steve Jobs,
Right.
but it's an iPhone. It's about me. It's an iPad because it's about me.
That's good. I'll tell you a quick story about George Patton. I'm a retired banker, and I worked down in New Orleans, Louisiana for a few years. It's not quite like Houston, but Houston's not quite like New Orleans either. But I ran 60-some branches, and so when a complaint bubbled up to me, I mean, it was a real complaint. And I'd always have my assistant come through and find out as much information as can about the person, the accounts, and all that. So this one bubbled up to me. It was about one of our branches. Something had happened and didn't like it, and so I asked my assistant to call the person back and tell them I wanted to go out and see him. Well, the person couldn't believe that somebody come out and see him at his house, and it was no problem. The problem got resolved in less than 5 minutes. And as I'm sitting in his den, there's a big round coffee table like this. And on the perimeter of the coffee table were books about George Patton. And so as we're closing the problem, I pick up one of the books and I said, I see you're pretty fond of George Patton. And as I'm looking at it, the guy's the author. And his name was Richard Stillman. And I said, I see you're the author. He said, oh yeah, he said, I served 18 months, last 18 months of the war under Patton. And so I was able to capture, some of his traits and so forth. But what an incredible opportunity for me. And I think they got his brain around. And at that time, I'd been a past mayor, and he couldn't believe that not only a banker came to his house, but a mayor came to his house. So every time he called me, he said, now this is Dick Stillman. How are you doing, Mayor? How's the mayor doing? You're the general, or you're the guy that's sitting, But it was quite an experience, and he had some great stories about that. Some other people but with you.
Can't think of one off the top of my head.
Anybody you worked for that thought was
I had a grocery manager when I worked in the grocery business a long time ago, and he was really good.
what made him, what do you think, as being good?
He wouldn't ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do. And he looked out for his employees.
Wow. Good. You had any experience in it? They can.
Yeah.
Okay.
I worked for a city manager once. She was actually the very first city manager that I worked for coming out of grad school. And she would do a thing anytime we were having an intense discussion about something, the way that the city should handle an issue. She would sit back and she'd go, argue with me. And she would, for that period of time, let you buck the trend, argue your point, whatever it was that you felt passionate about, she gave you the space to do that. And then she would take that into account and then call the shot and say, okay, here's how I think we ought to proceed. And sometimes she took your advice. Sometimes she said, I hear you, but I disagree. So we're going to go with this. And I learned very quickly to respect her and to feel respected from her, because she was always soliciting this advice, actually taking it in. And then, helping, and she did what we mentioned here earlier. She would let you have the glory if something went well. And if something went poorly, because she knew that you were following her direction and that you guys were a team, she would take all the heat if something went poorly.
Good.
And I mean, she
That's
was an incredible example to work under.
And what she was doing was making sure she could get to the point of having what she hoped for was buy-in, whatever the situation was. And, I have a practice that I don't talk to people in general without learning something. I always want to learn something, because it's just, there's so much to be shared, and not everybody's got the answers. One that I have noticed in my years is a manager or is a leadership there all the time. And what do you think?
I think so, absolutely. You serve as a leader, you serve as a living example to help others come together for a common goal or purpose. And I believe that's a big, you're always on stage, so to speak, when you're a leader.
Well, I think that concept, and we talked about it some this weekend, about the top-down leadership, that inverted pyramid, where the CEO or the person that is technically at the top of the org chart should be at the bottom of to lift up everybody else and to support and to be that servant leader idea. And I think that when you approach leadership from that angle, that you are there to serve the team, to get them the tools that they need to succeed, then yes, that needs to be there all the time. Because that's the aspect of leadership that I think is most crucial and sometimes overlooked, is that you're not just there to call a shot. You're not just there to set a vision. You're there to equip the team for success and to provide them the backup and the support that they need to meet those goals. And so that aspect of it has to be there 24/7.
Yes, I don't disagree.
I guess a balance of when we're saying there all the time, like, they don't necessarily physically be there all the time, but available on call, or I don't know.
Yeah, definitely on call. I know Steve used to be my boss, and I do it with my employees now, but if they know that there's a problem anytime, if it's 2 a.m., call me first. And we don't necessarily, Steve may not necessarily fix the problem. I might not necessarily fix the problem, but just knowing that you can call me anytime and then talk about the problem,
Exactly.
probably end up fixing it yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we get even more macro, like right now we're talking about 24/7,
Right.
Yeah.
but let's consider seasons of life or seasons of the year or phases of an organization. I don't think that there is any point along our professional trajectory that having a strong leader isn't crucial to success. That being there all the time in terms of every phase of an organization's existence or every individual's personal progress through a career or any season of the year, I think it's always crucial that there is a good leader in position, because every day is you're laying a brick in your professional wall. And if you don't build that brick well and you have it start to crumble, that section of your wall is never going to be as strong as it needs to be. And so I think a leader in many ways helps you shape that brick, lay the foundation. Yeah.
I think even too, going back to trust. So like the leader has to trust the employees and give them the resources enough that they can step away and let them flourish.
Well,
So going back to
I'll
respect,
give you,
respect and trust.
I'll give you a little bit different
Both ways.
perspective. But there have been times that I don't want to be a leader.
No, that's true.
And I want other people to take charge and to do things. And when I say, are they always there? If I'm in the room, it's implied. But I wanted to be in the room and make sure that don't call on me. I want somebody else to take that role. It's part of the selfishness. I mean, I do it all the time. That's get tough.
So you've stood up a EOC before, emergency operations.
Oh, yeah.
So under a disaster, when a big storm's coming or something horrible's happened, you operate under a different set of rules than you do in your day-to-day operations. So oftentimes when you're setting up an EOC, an emergency operations center, somebody who is on the day-to-day a permit processor may be the most experienced communicator with FEMA with regards to dealing with flood claims. And so in that instance, someone who maybe normally is talking to the chief of police, they may be tempted to hold on to the role of, I'm going to run this EOC. But if you're dealing with a bunch of FEMA flood claims, then under the operations and when you're dealing with an emergency, that person who has the experience in the thing that you're dealing with needs to become the ultimate leader in that room. And so I think to your point, you don't always want to be a leader in terms of sometimes there are people that are better equipped to lead through a situation than you. And being a good leader is knowing when to say, I'm not the best person to call this shot. Yeah, you've got the experience, you've got the skill set. Please, I'll take your lead on this issue.
Exactly.
I think that makes a good leader too.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's not there.
Yeah, I think disappeared.
Disappeared.
Oh, yeah.
But he's at work, so he probably
May have
had.
had a job.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was on city council and the mayor was of course another mayor. But there were times when, please say something, Mayor, because you're getting to go back to leadership boy, because there's a gap of, well, really, the five of us need to know where you're coming from. And you're right, I mean, you play that card and other play it. Now, very interesting. Now, how do we grow leaders? And that's the one that is positive.
So leadership training organization.
Yeah.
How do we grow leaders?
Yeah. As long as we talk about it.
I think it's my example.
Yeah.
We have a thing we call a CP, what used to be called CPG.
PMG, project management.
And it basically went 7 or 9 steps.
Well, the old CPG was 16 steps.
And it's a lot.
Well, that was planning, implementation, and evaluation.
We don't have those. but
So
10
in the whole concept is take an idea and put it on paper. And the Iowa said it best, just because it's an idea doesn't mean it's a good idea. When you start to put it on paper, you start to see the flaws.
Right.
And you haven't thought it through enough to know if it will succeed unless you put it on paper. You've anticipated the problems and found a solution before it became a problem.
Yeah.
So as you're writing, putting a budget together, you realize that, oh, I need more dollars than I thought I could do this with. So I've got to come up with a solution of getting more money appropriated to this thing. I need more manpower. I need more, whatever it is.
Right.
And you think it through, write it through, and then by having it on paper, you share it with your committee, and the committee gets a chance to pick it apart and say, hey, did you ever think about this?
Yeah.
Did you ever think about what happens if this happens? And you start working through it. Hopefully, by the time you get to an event, you've solved the problem before they became a problem. And I think that's what I try to tell them at my filling company. As a good leader, I get people come to me all the time. How do you become a business owner? I've never worked for anybody.
Yeah.
I've always worked for myself. I think a good business owner is a person that can anticipate the problem before it's a problem, come up with a solution to head off the problem. And if there's a problem that you didn't anticipate, have a backup plan so that you can go, whatever the event is can continue on.
Yeah.
If a truck breaks down, I've got another truck on hold, I've got a way to get, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, no, good point.
Domino's Pizza started off.
So much.
I can. No, I would agree with, by example, just taking somebody kind of like Brandon, where you allow them to shadow, allow them to learn and grow, just with everything that you personally know as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough.
I think
It's tough.
leaders are invested in. I think a lot, I'm not gonna say everybody, because there are some people that are not made to lead, or some people who just do not ever want to lead. But I think that all of us have a certain propensity for leadership at some level. And like any skill, whether it's playing an instrument or playing a sport, being a leader is more of a action than it is a status. And so just like you have muscle memory in a sport or in playing an instrument, it is something that has to be given the opportunity to flourish. You have to equip the person, give them the correct tools to utilize their skill, and then you have to coach and provide feedback so that they can hone their abilities as a leader, so that when they come into a situation where their leadership skills are called upon, it's second nature to them to step into that role and help guide the organization through whatever hurdles they're facing.
The fail, but not.
Yeah, you have to allow room for failure.
I was gonna say, I think trial by fire is a big part of an experience. You have to fail. I mean, if I'm gonna have as leader, if I'm gonna have empathy for what you're going through planning the pig roast, it's because I've planned it 3 or 4 times and I've seen the failures. And I know no matter what the failure is, we can get through the failure. It's not an issue. But without having the experience of failure, I don't think you have the empathy or the ability to.
No, the failure and all that's, it's experience. But is it fair for somebody to say, hey, I think you're a good leader, and I'm gonna help you?
You have to have it you might, as a leader, I think a good leader can see the good leadership potential in others.
But is it fair for me to say that to you?
I think it's there to give somebody a shot if they don't want to take it.
Or to encourage them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I agree. I think that you don't have to say it quite that bluntly, but I want to make sure I prepare you so that I'm going to leave or when I get promoted, I want you to be able to do it. And I think that's very difficult for a lot of people.
Being able, I think a good leader is able to identify the strengths and weaknesses, work on the weaknesses, and my personal, let you go out and experience from that weakness what a failure is.
Right.
And then sit back and say, analyze it together, and would there been a thought process that you could use to avoid that problem?
Yeah, well, thinking of our community and going back to the JCs, I would tell you that our community looked to the JCs to produce leaders. Because we knew that the process would build upon the strengths and try to produce people who can take over some leadership role.
Hopefully you can help us build another chapter down here, which.
We could. I mean, we had some very active, we had a very active chapter for probably 25 years.
That is the old train station.
Yeah, absolutely. And even before that, they were on top of the firehouse down on South Broadway. And in that meeting room up there, but it was, as I said, as one just getting involved in the community, I can guarantee you, we look at the DCs, you know, sit there some, please.
And I think that answers your question. Is there avoiding leadership? Where'd they go?
Yeah, where are they? Yeah.
Well, sometimes I think there's a difference between dues-based organizations and organizations that offer a similar type of experience, maybe not a JC experience, that is a free experience versus a dues paid and you have to give that member the value for that membership.
I think that's a
and show
huge,
leadership skills.
yes.
Some of the notes I made is, make it easy to get involved. Sometimes they put up a lot of hurdles that you really don't have to do that. Mentoring, talk about that, have a sense of purpose. As we're going along, have a vision for yourself and as a professional vision. And I think that can change. I know over my period of managing and so forth, my vision changed and it can happen. Willing to make sacrifice.
I've got another thing to add while we're still on this page. So that city manager who I was talking about, my very first boss, I remember when she came into the organization, because I actually was hired by a different city manager. He left between the time that I was hired and the time that I started writing. So I was there without the full city manager. I answered to this secretary city manager for a while. When the city manager came in, the first thing that she did was she spent the first week shadowing all of the staff. So she followed everybody around, right? And that was cool, but the coolest thing that she did as she began to work with us as staff was she would say, I imagine you moving on to this position, or I think you could benefit from knowing this skill. Do you agree? And that's actually the secretary to the city manager was a very talkative woman, very energetic, hilarious. The city manager told her, I think that you would make a really good public information officer. Is that something that you're interested in learning? And Nikki said, yeah, I would love to expand what I do here. And so the city manager actually helped her roadmap out how to get there, how to achieve that, what skills she would need, what certifications. And she actually, just by knowing her, getting to know her, was able to show her a path to leadership that I don't think she ever saw. But when she saw that opening, she realized it would be a great fit. Let me try it. And she's a 3 or 4 time national award-winning PIO now, still serving the city of South Padre Island, and is getting accolades every year for the magazine that she created for the city down there. So, I mean, I think a great leader is facilitated by someone who's willing to get to know you and invest in what you could be, because they have that vision for what a fully fulfilled version of you could look like.
That's really important. And I think that's the answer. Now, the part that complicates it now is in person versus remote. And I truly think that as we sit around this table, the interaction is much different than somebody. Oh, we have we have somebody join us.
That's Nick's
Nick's
wife.
wife.
And our member and secretary. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, again, from an experience standpoint, it's good to have the interaction face to face. And a good leader will take advantage of it. And you gotta tell me more, all those kind of things. So very good.
Now, look at this generation.
Oh, boy.
You have some real concerns. At our age, we've been through a lot, we've seen a lot. And one thing that I think we both can do is that face-to-face communication this texting stuff, emailing, I can't read your facial expressions.
Right.
I can't hear that sigh because you really don't agree, but I want to be positive.
Yeah.
That generation we have coming in, they don't know how to communicate effectively because they don't realize that those facial expressions, those deep sighs are something that you read as
Right.
much as you hear the words.
Absolutely. And if you capitalize words, recognition point behind it. Because that's my next one, the role of social media.
Oh, it's scary.
Yeah, it is. My wife does almost all texting. And then you hear me, I pick up the phone and I try to call people.
That's it.
And because I like to hear the reflection in the voice and all those kind of things. But my wife is a great leader.
Yeah.
You'll get one word answers from texting.
Yeah.
I've
Two words, call me.
never even got that.
Yeah, it really is. It really has changed. And I think the dilemma the schools are in right now is because of that 2 to 3 year hiatus we had on in classroom has really changed the process. And most will agree that they're probably 2 years now behind in trying to communicate now. I don't want to fault media and technology in that it does have a place and it can certainly help out the process. But social media has, and the other thing is, what do I call it here? Hiding behind the keyboard attitude. Yeah. It's a lot easier to do this than to say, hey, you know what?
Well, I can't spell, so it's not a lot easier.
The thing else is, the problem is, it may put the wrong word in. That's one of the problems I
It's a
have.
one finger deal.
Here's the devil's advocate to the complaints raised thus far. There is something to be said about the connectivity and the catalyst for social movements that social media has allowed for. I think that there's a lot of vitriol and a lot of darkness through social media, but I would contend that is there not because of the social media, it is there because deep down, most people suck. And sometimes it is easy to let our basest alignments come out because we don't have some of these social constraints that being in person, you're not going to say some nasty things to some people in real life because you might get punched in the face, but you could be really nasty behind a keyboard. It's not the keyboard's fault.
No.
It's because you've been enabled to let that side of you out. I think that there are a lot of things. I think to Adam Conover from Adam Ruins Everything, several other shows. He is probably one of the most eloquent individuals that I know of on social media. Every time he posts something, I'm like ready to go out and start picketing, or like he's very inspiring in the way that he can lay out a persuasive argument. I'd say, that there is still that art of persuasion, that art of understanding the humanity when it comes to conversation. That's still there.
Sure.
But I think that you're right that, like many modern things, technology does allow our worst parts of humanity to be more well preserved versus, I think in the past, we have been nasty to each other, but that's not been encapsulated in news articles and, a mean word shared between a bunch of people at a bar was not encapsulated in some sort of newsreel weeks from now, but something that gets posted certainly will attract media attention and sticks around in the social consciousness a lot longer.
So I used to be a Michigan JC before I became an Ohio JC. I'm sorry. I still don't, Michigan, I'm going there this weekend. Anyway, they've got their whole JC group for the Michigan JCs. They have a group on Facebook just called Post It Here. And so they do, in my mind, a good example of good leadership social media in a sense that they allow different leaders and different JCs from around the state to post ideas, to post projects, to promote and post, share PMGs. It's like a discussion board, but it's great to be able to get all kinds of ideas gathered together, post comments, post
In real time.
connection, yeah.
Together without having to travel to. physically meet each
Exactly.
other.
So it's just like if people want to meet up or if people want to share ideas, it's
Do they use much visual with it?
sometimes they'll
Because I
post
think
events,
that's the
sometimes they'll
other thing
post
that-
pictures.
Yeah,
But
I think
it's
that's the
more-
other thing that can help out in that, yeah.
Yeah,
As a side.
It's a great way to-
This is the second time today you said people saw it. I really thought about-
Spend a weekend out of this.
Well, our lunch day, we got 3 women, different organizations, people just saw it.
They do. At our core, we do. It's nature. You do not ever teach a toddler to steal a toy from another. Our human nature tends to be kind of nasty. And the best parts of humanity are oftentimes when we're being intentional. That's my stance.
Well, I think the thing that has, to me, made the difference on the technology, as you can lie easier.
Mhm.
You can misrepresent, you can be a fraud.
Or they
I think a lot of people-
misunderstand some,
Pardon me?
they misunderstand since you're writing in like one sentence at a time or something, they take it the wrong way.
Oh, that's the other thing, then it's on the side of receiving then.
Yeah.
But I've learned that primarily, in the city world. I mean, somebody had something on, I don't follow it regularly, believe me, I just don't want to do it. But my wife will sometimes say, oh boy, you're going to read this one. And it was a picture of this beautiful house in a meadow, and all around it were smaller homes like Quonset huts. And the person made a comment, boy, Grove City is just allowing anything to happen. And I'm looking at that picture and said, I can't figure out where the heck this is. And there's 100 comments about, well, the city's about time that they don't allow this, and the mayor did this and did that. The picture was a fraud. It wasn't even Grove City. And so to me, that's where, how do you call out those things?
The Asian Festival, we had a picture one year, so I've known the Asian Festival for 12 years, and I was chairman of it for 2 so far. We had a picture somebody took at the Asian Festival of a young girl that bought a kimono and put it on. I mean, 3 or 4 years old. It's the cutest picture in the world. The girl was white, and somebody from California, no skin in the game, doesn't know who the Asian Festival is, doesn't know anything about Columbus, Ohio, started talking about how that was cultural appropriation and white people just think they can come take over. And one person, being a troll, a newspaper picked it up. It became a very big deal, like to the point where we had to hire PR people to take care of it. And just because they wanted their 15 minutes of fame on our back, essentially. But it became a big deal just off of what was a great picture. I mean,
From years before.
they're selling these. The whole point of the Asian Festival
like
is
a year or
to
two
introduce you
ago.
to the Asian culture. I mean, it's great that the people are buying the stuff and wearing it, but
Yeah,
one person created
we're not gonna come up with any solutions. It's here, and I think we gotta leverage it as best we can. But as I say, the thing that pops up, in my opinion, most frequently is people hiding behind a keyboard and putting things on that are untrue.
Well, and when we know that people are doing that, it's our responsibility, all of us, to research before we engage.
Yeah.
And that's something, a step that I feel like gets missed all the time.
That's all of it.
You know,
Your anger may be instant, and
yeah.
I feel like a good leader too learns to adapt with each new thing. It's like I can see, and I mean, even starting now, role of AI, where's that fit into all this stuff? Like things are constantly evolving. And so just figuring out how you manage as a group. Yeah.
Are you the real I?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I've evolved in technology. I was a computer programmer and systems person for a number of years. And believe me, I totally respect it. Now, I do not respect the phone because they could put so much stuff on it. And when we were programming, I mean, we need a computer as big as this room to put in the phone.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, that's just the way it is. Well, I mean, we're, as I said, we're discussing it helps,
Yeah.
but it's tough world. What's some of the others?
I think there's definitely pros and cons to social media. It's in determining what's appropriate and what's not, and what can benefit you and what's.
Yeah.
not.
What's worth the time?
My biggest benefit is I don't get off.
Sometimes taking a break is good. What do they call that when
Well-
you take a break from social media?
No, there's another term.
You know that, I mean, there's a whole healthcare, like, you
Mental
know,
health awareness.
yeah,
thing
like
towards it.
around social media. Because
People want to show you what they want you to see.
Yeah.
well, it impacts young minds that are just starting to develop and don't have the ability to really suss through what they're looking through. I mean,
Yeah.
we could talk about that all the
Let's see,
time.
see if Ally has any,
Any comments on the issue of social media, Ally?
She's got interviews,
Pleading
but
the fifth.
Mrs. Haringa, any thoughts?
well, the other thing is the devices themselves. And how that can evolve and what to do with it and so forth. But, you know, I just bring it up because from a leadership standpoint, it's difficult to be able to manage it. Because you can constantly putting out fires that are some arsonists putting it out on the keyboard. This one is the direct and indirect man or leader. Direct leader obviously is someone who's out and, you know, physical presence or whatever, and also one who is distributing information, so forth. But there are indirect leaders. Do any of you agree with that? That there are kind of indirect leaders?
I think you have to be both. Depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think one of the things that is the capstone of indirect leader is their primarily their written communication ability. Just by the way they present information and they now with that person necessarily want to stand up from the group and present, not necessarily, but by the way they've written it. In case of putting together a PowerPoint or whatever, they're a leader, they're an indirect leader. Plus, there's I can't remember what book it was, talked about those who are leaders by default. It's something like your PIO person that they've just kind of become leaders by default, and it happens. So they're coming in indirectly. Body language. Me, an indirect leader has some body language that can lead you along. And then where do we go from here? I had no idea. You know, it's just incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we can bring as many people along as we can, and to use any of the technology and all the other skills that are available out there. It's just, I mean, so you gotta have people serving, in my case, in the political side, in leadership roles that have the best interest of the community in mind and don't see it as a job and can exert consensus and make sure things get done. And if we don't, we're really in trouble. And then to me, it's a difference in not really pick on the General Assembly, which bubbles up into Congress. But the General Assembly is one where I think that the tide has turned, where a lot of it is I have a job, I get benefits, I got mileage, and you go on down to the list.
the problem with that is that decisions are now made so you keep your job rather than serving.
Right.
100%.
Yeah, yeah. So that is where I'm ending.
Welcome to join us.
And I'll be happy to take any questions, discuss any of the subject any way you want to.
Appreciate it.
I'm just so pleased to be able to be with you and get.
So I'll start off some questions. You've had multiple stints as mayor. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen this tenure
Scale.
previous?
Scale. I mean, we had 15 police officers when I started, we have 80. We had, I don't know how many miles of road, now we got 10 times. So I think the scale has probably been the thing that has impacted the most. The other one is, again, I'm picking on the General Assembly, is what is layered on us. That we used to be able to be pretty much, it's called a home rule city, which means we have our own mini constitution, it's only that thick. And we made pretty much our own rules on the council agreed to them. And if we had to have some major changes, which people had a change made to the charter. But that's probably the three biggest things. And people themselves have changed. They're so many single purpose. And
So many what, sorry?
pardon me,
So many what?
single purpose. They only have one thing in mind, and it's your job to do that one thing. And to me, the General Assembly is guns and abortion. And so it's pretty narrowly stacked up. Nothing wrong with that very macro view, but boy, you can get eaten alive on the detail. Anybody else?
So obviously, you see there's a lack of leadership, and with scaling, how does that affect the city? Not having the leaders also going from 15 officers to 80 officers?
Training probably is the biggest thing that you gotta, because of the scale, where you used to be able to walk around and see what could be done and not done. So training now really kicks in, making sure you're getting the people as well equipped as possible. One of the things, as an example, our officers automatically embraced body cameras. And we thought, somebody's looking over your shoulder all the time with a body camera, they're not going to like that. It was quite the opposite. And that helped out management wise, because it became a training tool. The video of your stop the other night, here's some things that became pretty evident. So the scale has improved and made us be better at some things. And the public, because we have a core downtown, and it hasn't grown that much, it still becomes that magnet. And so that's helped out. In one of the few communities, we got a 200-acre development, stone's throw away from here, except here with the county fairgrounds, normally town ground where you.
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing soon. This is the last call to apply for library cards. You have 10 minutes to complete your computer work. Please make your way to the first floor. If you need help, ask for assistance at this time. Thank you.
But that made a difference, I would imagine. It's been fun to watch them all. The library here, I mean, 20 years ago, we talked about replacing the library. It's like, now technology, and what are you doing with a library? Library only needs about 10,000 square feet, so people can go in on the computer and do whatever they want to do. Well, here you got it. And as you can see, that parking lot, that's full most of the time. And so it's working.
Are they building a community center over here or
No,
some type of?
we are going to build a community center somewhere. But there's a venue that's gonna be built. Hopefully, it'll take a lot of city support. But, there'll be a venue built for activities. Well, all I can tell you is thank you. Keep it going. Grow.
Is there
And,
anything else the J.C.'s can help the city do
Yeah.
long and short term?
I
Or
was gonna ask, the voids that you see in the community, how could we as individual leaders or we as an organization help to fill those voids?
Well, on the political side, you gotta live in the city. On the macro side, being good examples, we have a lot of commissions. Probably the one that is as impactful as any is a committee we call the Keep Our City Beautiful.
Oh.
And they run our Eco Fest. They do street cleanups, voluntary drop off, recycling programs, those kind of things. And so being a good custodian of the community is very important. So being outside, that is one that you're really easy to get involved in. And they do put you to work.
Well, we commended the Easter egg hunt down here for.
Yeah, we did the Easter egg hunt for quite a few years.
What was it?
Easter egg hunt? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we partnered with Purple Door Church for Thanksgiving food baskets.
Sure.
And we've got food pantry, which technically is in Grove City. It's next to our office up on Harrisburg Pike.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
trying to get involved
Yeah.
in the community.
Well, and it's not well defined. I mean, we have the big food pantry out at by the interstate as an example. And then we also have our own Grove City food pantry. We now have 3 churches doing Saturday meals, which all makes sense. And those are the things that anybody wants to come close to it, like our food pantry. They love having that.
Our chapter currently does already collaboration with Keep Columbus Beautiful.
Oh,
and they
sure.
do a couple of pickups, trash pickups. I feel like that's something that we could easily even collaborate with the Grove City Young Professionals or do maybe a cleanup day for Grove City as well. Maybe combine our forces.
Yeah.
Foundation
Would be-
extension chapter, our Chamber of Commerce here. We've got the president of the chamber. Chris. Chris. Yeah, Chris was gonna sit on our board, Jeff Busker
Yeah,
wants to sit on. the
those are
board.
2. Yeah.
This weekend.
Yes.
Well, we never have too much help. I mean, but the service clubs are no different than anything else with not being able to bring people along and have the manpower. I'm a 40-year member of our Lions Club here, and we still have 3 50-year members.
Wow.
Yeah. But things have changed. Well, thank you all for letting me share.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, for everybody at home, watching online or watching the recording, thank you for being with us here this evening. We appreciate it. Keep an eye on our Facebook page, the North Columbus JCs, for all upcoming events. We look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at the pig roast coming up in 2 weekends, the 29th and the 30th at the JC Arms in the JC Village. Feel free to message the Facebook page should you have any questions.